All right, we are live with Doug Pestana of Legalmente.ai, and he is here, graciously agreed to this interview. We have about an hour to discuss the impact of artificial intelligence, LLMs, on the legal profession. That the tsunami of AI that's coming is coming. Is it coming for the lawyers? Is it coming for the paralegals? What's the impact going to be? Is it going to take my job? Is it going to enhance my ability to do my job? And most importantly, for ESW's purposes, is it going to enhance the ability of people to do their work who used to be in the United States or Canada from Latin America in the same time zones or near time zones, but remotely? So we'll be discussing that with Douglas today. Once again, Douglas, I really appreciate you taking this opportunity to speak with us today and taking an hour out of your busy day to have this conversation. Welcome to the ESW webcast number 5.
Thank you so much, James. Happy to be here. Pleasure.
Okay. Well, tell us about what motivated you to co-found Legalmente. I know the company has been founded in the last 18 months, is it, or 2 years?
Yeah, we incorporated 2 years ago and we got investment funding sometime like mid last year and just been at it ever since. What got us motivated? Lawyers are expensive. They're not incentivized really to make their processes more efficient because they charge you by the hour. So when they are looking at technology and AI, I think that lawyers are looking at about how can they use it to make more money for themselves. Most law firms, not all. There's definitely some lawyers who are trying to be, good stewards of their clients' money and that sort of thing. So everyone, I think if I polled anybody in your audience right now, like tell me an example of you having a bad experience with a lawyer or where your legal bill was through the roof. I'm sure somebody would be able to share some type of story about that. So that was really the motivation. I co-founded it along with my business partner Jose Padilla, who is a practicing lawyer. He graduated from Harvard and University of Pennsylvania. He has been practicing law for 20 plus years. And then he started his own law firm. And he basically says this, like, I don't like these things about the industry. I don't like the fact that these are, they charge so much. My law firm is designed to make things more cost effective for clients, and because I could do things really fast. Now, is there a way to make it even cheaper and more cost effective for clients? Can AI be part of that solution? So that's where he and I got together, and I come from an AI background. I've been working in AI for the past 14 years as an AI engineer, data scientist, and then I worked into management, started leading teams. So I know a lot about AI. I know what it's capable of. I know what the hypes and the myths are around it, and I know its realities. I know its practical applications, and I've been just doing my whole life is just building practical solutions in real world scenarios. So that's where we got together and said, let's use AI to help drive down the cost of legal even more. That's how we started. That was the motivation for doing it, because a lot of people can't afford lawyers, or especially startups.
Yeah, I mean, I actually originally came across your company when I was looking for some sort of AI platform that could help us standardize our affiliate contracts, among other things. Maybe we can even discuss that off the air after we get done today and follow up in emails. But I was certainly looking for a solution for ExitStrategy.World to, basically standardize our affiliate agreement, because we've got people that want to work with us as affiliates in multiple countries. And, it's always a question of, okay, so what is the jurisdiction? Is it where we are? And usually, obviously, as the company, we would pick the jurisdiction. But I mean, there's so many different things that maybe go into it. If the rate varies a little bit depending on what type of affiliate they are, et cetera. So, I was really fascinated when I came across your company, because I thought, yeah, here's somebody who's really, about to hop on a very big wave. In fact, and I probably mentioned this in the previous webcast for those who've listened to all of them before, which is probably very few of you, but I was talking to a lawyer in Mexico, based in Mexico City, with the law firm that we ended up working with on our Mexico offer to help people get residency down there, because we see another big wave of gringo retirees of both younger boomers and older Gen Xers who are headed to Mexico. Even some people in Silicon Valley, believe it or not, who in that industry that's so reliant on face-to-face contacts are looking at the math of living in California simply no longer makes sense for them and their families. And they're thinking about relocating down to Mexico City because they can hop on a flight anytime they like to, San Francisco or LA from Mexico. It's very convenient. And the time zone math works out. There are, English-speaking schools, Catholic schools for their children as well, and so forth. But, just looking at it from the perspective of even a lot of practicing small law firms and small lawyers who may decide that the cost of living also doesn't pencil or tabulate for them. And they're thinking to themselves, what if I could take my legal practice and conduct it via Zoom, have a virtual assistant or even a personal assistant in Mexico City versus trying to run, a small independent law practice in a place like not even Los Angeles or San Francisco, let's just say Dallas or Houston, some places that quote unquote used to be cheap and aren't so cheap anymore to live in. And, I was thinking about that too before our conversation today, because I grew up with a lot of, frankly speaking, working class lawyers, people who were barely middle class in their law practices, because they were divorced lawyers or they were doing probate, or they're lawyers with some health problems. Maybe they can't work as many billable hours per week as they used to. They need to maximize their efficiency. So I wanted to ask you, do you, from this perspective, it's not just going to be about the big law firms trying to standardize as much as they can by, say, cutting paralegal staff, frankly, or just not having as many junior associates around. But is it about can these tools give the smaller lawyers more ability to work with more clients because the AI can help them process a lot of those, let's say, smaller tasks while they still keep their fees reasonable for the type of small business clients they have, especially in, let's say, the less lucrative areas of the law?
No, yeah. So I want to make the distinction of sort of like the larger, big law firms with, dozens of lawyers on staff. And then you have, small to mid-sized firms. And the one thing with the law so we have competition. There's other legal tech companies, but they're geared more towards solving a problem for the big law firms. Here's how we can standardize and make your processes more efficient, but they don't translate those cost savings back to the client. So it's all about making those big law firms more money. When you're a small and mid-sized firm, you have a smaller team, you have a smaller legal staff. You're obviously trying to maximize the profit, but AI can help automate some of those other tasks and allow you to continue to service clients who may not be able to afford a larger law firm. I know, like, for example, Jose's got his law firm. He's got a global workforce as well. He's got and the reason for that is, like, I'm trying to help reduce pass my cost savings onto my clients, and I can't really do that with inflation's out of control, not just prices in the US, but also labor inflation here in the US, and lawyers their salaries keep going up. So it's not like he can go and get this really expensive lawyer and then add him to the staff. So he has to really, like, diversify his workforce, his global staff. But the other part of it is that he has to use AI. He has to make his operations more efficient in order to continue to have those competitive rates for clients who do look. And this is happening. There was a report that came out in Reuters in the beginning of this year. Reuters and Georgetown Law basically say there's a lot of legal clients that are looking to move their legal work down market to lower price firms. So and that would be something like Jose's firm. But in order for him to remain competitive against the larger firms, he has to first look globally and try to, like, I got to diversify my talent pool, and also I got to start leveraging AI technologies to be able to continue to have, maintain these rates in those past and preserve those cost savings for my clients. He could do what everybody else does in the legal world, which is raise your rates every year and that benefits nobody except the big law firms. It does not benefit legal clients. You're going to be hard pressed to find like a company like Legalmente who is actually trying to make legal costs lower for businesses and for individuals. You might have heard of like LegalZoom, but LegalZoom does a lot of business in entity formation. They're not really. It's not like they don't have AI assisted contract review, for example. Every other legal tech that we've kind of seen in the space has just been how do you make the lawyers more money versus how do you save the legal clients more money. So just to kind of make that distinction and bring it full circle, this is helping AI, not just Legalmente.ai. AI is helping small to mid-sized law firms help preserve their operating margins so that they can continue to remain competitive against larger firms.
Yeah, and I certainly think that's a good thing, and it's even a good thing from, without getting too political here, from a freedom perspective, that you have mid-sized law firms staying alive, like for the same reason you want, Main Street small businesses to stay alive, because if everything's dominated by a few large white shoe law firms, that in practice is not going to be necessarily great for the state of rights and freedoms in the United States, I would argue. And it even has, I think, spillover effects into other countries. I mean, one of the reasons we invited you on this program, as I mentioned when I reached out to you initially, was that we've been having a series of conversations with Latin American entrepreneurs. You're actually the first Latino, United States citizen Latino entrepreneur that we're interviewing, but we've talked to, Ernesto Contreras. We had a conversation with him. He's a Venezuelan-born entrepreneur who's now based in Mexico City, and he was telling me on the show about how VCs. He'd had conversations with VCs, but when he goes to these conferences in Dubai, tech executives, tech startup founders come to him. We're talking about people who were at Google, were at the big firms, got burned out, or just wanted to start their own thing. Did their time, paid their dues. Now they're getting VC money, and they come up to them and they say, Ernesto, how is it in Mexico City? How can is it hard to get residency? Is it, what's it like? I mean, compared to the cost of living in California where I'm at, or even in Denver, it's getting really high. And so, I mean, and we're not talking about people who are making less than six figures here. We're talking about people who are trying to support a family of four on, maybe 100, 150, 200K, whatever a year. And they're still like, wait, this is not working so well for me. So obviously one of the expenses that startup founders face, a big chunk of their expense is legal costs. And so you guys are offering a solution. And, I like to think that I'm having conversations about the pain points, not only the pain points of my audience, but the pain points of my future clients at ESW. So we're offering a solution. And the solutions we're offering, obviously, it's no secret in our industry that, frankly, a lot of the work that is billed to lawyers is being done by paralegals in Latin American countries, in Mexico City, or in Asuncion, Paraguay. Not picking on naming any names or picking on anybody, but it is just a fact. Or in Colombia as well, wherever a lot of Americans are going and getting residency right now in Latin America. The work's being done by paralegals, and being billed at local, quite generous by local standard lawyer rates. So with that being said, your partner's also in healthcare, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, but, because that's besides the law and the legal industry, healthcare is the other big field that is simultaneously being shaken up potentially by AI, because AI can do the diagnostics that have already, in some cases, been outsourced to people in the Philippines or India. That's number one. But number two, when you think about it, both the law and healthcare, and especially healthcare, have kind of been cartelized. Maybe that's the wrong word, too strong of a word, but certainly they've been guilds. The law itself is kind of a guild. Education's a guild. Healthcare is a guild. Right, you have all these barriers, certain barriers to entry, some for good reason. We don't want, all sorts of ambulance chasing lawyers, whatever the stereotypes are. And when somebody's cutting you open, a surgeon, you don't want it to be you don't go for necessarily the cheapest person who can do it, right? But at the same time, all of these guilds have something in common. Not only are they being disrupted by AI, all three guilds I mentioned, education, legal, and healthcare, but they're all subject to competition from not merely outsourcing, but people deciding that somebody else in Latin America can do it equally as well for a much lower cost. I mean, I'm particularly thinking of, cosmetic dentistry, dental implants, facelifts. We're talking about elective or semi-elective procedures that people want to get done that aren't necessarily, hey, I got to do this now. I got to go to the ER, or I got to have open heart surgery, next week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things to say there. Even on the when you were talking about how some of the stuff is being billed on the legal side, I'll get to the healthcare in a second, because I have a background in applying AI in the healthcare space as well. My what I've seen is that, and this is sort of what frustrates clients, is that they'll get billed for every little thing, even if they have a question. If a lawyer sends out an email, and it took them, just to send it out or to read an email, like you'll see the invoice saying, like, I read an email and then I wrote this email. If they have a phone call with them, even if the client just has a really simple question, they're billing him for that. And these aren't
the 15-minute billing
billings.
increment, right? 15 minutes minimum. That
Exactly.
bare minimum that a lawyer, and some lawyers bill in 30-minute increments, even if it took them 2 minutes to answer your question, right?
And some of it could just be like a really basic question, an educational question, like, could you just tell me what this means, right? And then the lawyer will bill you for that.
Yeah.
Now, our software can't give legal advice, but we educate the users. So, and that's usually like a lot of questions that they have is just, general questions like, what, explain to me these options and that sort of thing. And that's where AI thrives very well. But, you don't want to have to spend an arm and a leg just to get the answer to that question. So I wanted to address that point about legal. You addressed so many things, because I've also been traveling. I've been in like 7 countries the past 2 months. And I just
could you tell us briefly which countries, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I was in South America. I was in Argentina, Peru, Colombia, and Uruguay. And also in the past 6 weeks, I've been doing a tour of Southeast Asia, trying to just understand that business market, business climate, but also looking at just like the cost of living differences as well. I was in Thailand. I visited Laos, and also I was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and so it's a very interesting entrepreneurial scene. And there are, even Jose's got a lot of international clients. It's not all just U.S. clients that come to him. It's people that want to do business in the U.S. They may have a U.S.-based contract and they're coming to him, but they can't afford the U.S.-based lawyers. So, they come to Jose for some of that work. And that's the other advantage of Legalmente, by the way, is we have multi-language support. So even for Asian countries, we have Spanish support, Portuguese, and during my time in Malaysia, we had a lot of people interested in that. So we just said, okay, let's just open up the Malaysian language support as well. So we have all that because we do want this to be a global offering for people who cannot afford these U.S. prices. They're getting out of control. On the healthcare side, I worked in healthcare. I was at a large hospital network in South Florida. They have 11 hospitals, like 25,000 employees. Going in there, I'm like, now I know why healthcare is so expensive in the U.S. The administrative costs, the bureaucratic bloat, just to kind of get simple decisions on something require like a committee of 20 people. And you're paying for all of that. All that is just labor that's being passed on to patients. So when we got in there, it was like, AI is good, and there's, you don't even need to quote me on it. There's several studies showing how AI is accurate in being able to diagnose certain diseases. It can look at radiology images and be able to diagnose it pretty accurately. Theoretically, doctors should be using this as a tool to augment, not to replace their decision making, but to augment their decision making. But there's a lot of distrust with AI among doctors and physicians. So we spent a lot of time trying to educate and evangelize and get people to build up that trust in AI, because they hear stories in the news. Here's the one thing that the number one reason why I when I go in to somebody who is distrustful of AI, and trying to persuade them to adopt AI solutions to augment and make their lives more productive, basically make their lives easier. The number one reason is because they heard all the negative news stories about, oh, AI could become autonomous and then kill us like Terminator. Oh, look at this example of how AI cited wrong case law. They show like one really wrong example, and hallucinations are going to happen. We never said AI was going to be 100% perfect, because human beings are not even 100% perfect. There's flaws in human beings' decision making. Look at how much they have in medical malpractice lawsuits every year. That's flawed human decision making. So, like,
even Michael Jordan didn't sink every single winning shot.
exactly, but they want, for some reason, they have this standard for AI that even humans don't reach. And then, but I think just a lot of it is media. Media is really good about writing really negative news stories about AI. These little one-offs here and there. If one of Tesla's self-driving cars lights up on fire, that's all up on the news. Versus how many times self-driving is operating and people get to their destination safely. They don't want to cover those examples. There's always like this very outlying case. Same thing with AI. Like, the doctors will be distrustful of using it because they might have heard like one really bad example of it leading to some error. Lawyers also same thing. And what I found, like with AI, hospitals are very reluctant to use it for clinical diagnostics, and there's one reason is because of the FDA regulations around it. If you start to have an AI that starts diagnosing diagnosing illnesses or using it as a tool to replace doctors' decision making, you have to get FDA approval for that, and that's usually like a 5-year process, because it gets regulated as a clinical decision support or medical device, even if there is benefits to using it. This is why we tried to say, well, we're not using the AI to replace the decision maker. The doctor, that should never happen. The doctor should be the ultimate one making the decision. But why don't you use AI to help augment your decisions? Why don't you use AI to help make that time more efficient that you are with your patient? So we were piloting something at this hospital that I was working at, which would record the patient and physician conversation. Like, it was a mobile app. You could record the conversation, and and then it would transcribe. The conversation would transcribe, and then it would get automatically summarized by the AI. And what that ends up doing is it eliminates all the manual documentation time that the doctor had to does after they have that visit with the patient. And if you can eliminate all that manual documentation time, it means that you could spend more time with your patient. I don't know how many, I think the people in your audience will be able to kind of cite some examples of them being able to spend 2 minutes with their doctor. A doctor comes in and be like, okay, tell me what's wrong. Okay, here's a prescription. That's not enough time. The patient wants to have some time to talk with their doctor. But the reason why a doctor's always in a rush is he's got a lot of patients he's got to see. He's got to put all the information in the electronic health record. He's got to put the documentation time. So if you can use AI to automate all of that, you could spend more time with the patient. This is kind of like a win-win situation. We were able to get like 7 physicians to agree to this pilot. So I'm not saying all physicians are against AI, but a lot of them were. But we got this one, a group of really open-minded physicians who were like, yes, I want to use AI to help augment my day-to-day and make things more efficient, so I can spend more time with my patients. And as a result of that, that's going to improve the patient outcome. It's going to improve the patient experience. You'll probably just get better markers and better ratings from that they get great, that the hospital gets graded on. So it was things like that. In any industry I'm going to, it's always an education process. You're going in, everybody's read the stories about how AI is destructive. Nobody's reading stories about how it's been productive and how it's been positive. It's always the destructive, and if it bleeds, it leads articles. So when I'm going into organizations, I have to first evangelize them. Let me tell them what AI is capable of, what it's not capable of. Here's how you can use AI to in conjunction with your work, not as a replacement for your work. And that messaging seems to work.
Yeah, and I think there's a similarity too in the offshoring internationalization industry, right? People get stuck on horror stories or things, bad outcomes or what have you, or unscrupulous people in industry. And the vast majority of people who are trying to do right by their clients, who are trying to put them in a suitable situation, not just, say, hey, just get this passport or go to that country that everybody else is talking about in the industry at the moment, to focus on sizzle as opposed to substance. I think that there's a similar dynamic too, that sometimes the industry gets a bad name, and the fact of the matter is that, for example, with the Caribbean passports, people fixate on them sometimes negatively for geopolitical reasons because a lot of Russians and Chinese are getting those passports. But at the same time, there is a real valid economic benefit for a country like Dominica or St. Lucia. And by the way, these countries happen to be over, let's say 95% of the population is either historically black or mulatto. Just saying, what's wrong with helping these Caribbean countries develop themselves, as long as they're not letting in criminals and they're doing valid background checks. What is the problem? Who is being harmed, right? Where's the harm in to anybody from what they're doing? So it's like, I think why I mentioned guilds like education and healthcare and the law as guilds earlier is just from the perspective of these guilds for the long time were sort of growth centers, cost centers in the economy, to the point that the United States is spending, what are we spending? Like almost 20% of our GDP on healthcare. Are we getting better outcomes? Do we have longer life expectancies than, say, China, where they have a massive number of coal plants burning? I mean, they've been trying to clear the air the last few years, but you see what I'm saying, right? We have lower life expectancy than, I've even seen some statistics. Some people claim Cuba has better life expectancy than us. I'm not. Yeah. I'm dubious about that. But I would just say the point being that just spending more money and throwing more money at more problems and intensifying, increasing the bureaucracy is not leading to better health outcomes for people in the real world, right? It made a lot of money for a lot of HMO and PPO company executives and managers and the bureaucracy ballooned. I think somebody said that some elite universities, they've got almost, it's not even the ratio of professors and TAs to the student anymore. It's the ratio of academic managers and people who have this department and that DEI program and what have you. And AI, for all the negativity surrounding it and all the hate, it seems like it has a real potential to be a liberating factor too, and a disaggregating factor, and to be able to do to all these aggregations of, let's say, increasingly burdensome concentrations of economic power and regulatory power, to disaggregate them and free people from this tremendous burden, that's been on the backs of people, that's just been steadily accumulating over the last several decades, where, because we lost a lot of our manufacturing base, we lost a lot of the previous profit centers in the economy, people seem to just pile into these professions because that's where the money was, right? But it's like, was that good for the ordinary person on the street who maybe wasn't going to ever become a doctor or an IT executive or a politician or whatever the way to get ahead is in America today in 2024, right? And speaking of that, I did want to ask you about your other company that is helping people get the AI skills to work in these fields and work with these specific industries you mentioned, in terms of improving them. What made you, did you see it as sort of complementary to what you're doing with Legalmente, or were you looking at some of the other companies in the field? I forget the names of them right off the top of my head. Many of them are well known or becoming increasingly household names. These companies that say they can teach you how to code in, a 9 or 12 or 15-week course, whatever it is, or try to get you your foot in the door in Google and all the, there are many, let's say, representations. I won't say commitments, but you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. How do you differentiate yourself in that space as well? Because you mentioned competitors, and Legalmente has competitors, and certainly whatever you're doing in this other field that's related, you got even more competitors there.
Yeah, I for sure, and that one is saturated. I think the saturation started to come around 2017, where there was just all this renewed. It was a I saw more entrance into the field of data science and AI around 2017 to 2019 than I had seen in my past 14 years experience, and a lot of it was a proliferation of boot camps. And I can't tell what their success metrics are or what their track record is. They all say we can help you get placed into companies, and I think maybe they are successful at that. Somebody who's trying to do um, who's trying to do a career change. I actually mentored a few where they were like in a completely different field, and it's like I want to get into AI. Eventually, they all find the jobs, but my content is geared more towards um, once you're in those jobs. I spend less time about trying to help them get their first job in AI, and more or less like if you had it, what would you be doing it while you're there in order to increase your earning potential? So a lot of those companies focus on here. You need to know this programming. You need to know all the technicals, all the technical. You have to be a technical master of all the programming. And when you get into the field, the reality is actually much different. Your employers are not hiring you because they said you are a master at programming. They're hiring you to solve their business problems, and those business problems usually are related to things like how do I increase sales, how do I reduce costs, how do I make things more efficient. Your mastery of a certain programming language, or even mastery of certain statistical and mathematical models and techniques is helpful, but if you aren't using that to solve the problem, then you're just a dime a dozen. So I think a lot of these boot camps did train them all how to get their first job, but they didn't train them how to succeed at that first job, or how to think critically, or how to think creatively. Once you're in there, how do you use this new skill set that we teach you to solve problems? So I try to do that, but my content is also geared towards people who have no technical background at all. They're not really looking for a change. It could be a small business owner, for example, and they're like, "How do I use AI? I have all this, I've heard a lot about it, but how do I use it at my company?" So I try to create content and courses around here's AI for everyone. Like, here's, generally speaking, here's some use cases that you can use AI. You don't even need to hire a data scientist, an AI engineer to help solve these. You can use tools like ChatGPT, and you require no coding at all, like no programming at all. So I think those are probably like my two core audiences, are people that are really trying to, when they're in the field, trying to increase their earning potential and stand out among the crowd, versus me trying to compete with a company who's going to pretend to, or who pretends to say that we're going to help you get your first job in data scientist. I could say I can mentor students and show them how to do that, but I'd rather do a long-term thing where it's just like getting your first job is obviously very important, but it's not where it ends. You have several other years of working, and here's what you need to be doing in each instance at each employer. And then I just want to help evangelize AI in general, so that when they get into these roles, you don't get that so much resistance. You'd be surprised, even with all the benefits of AI, how many companies I've worked at where I just got a lot of resistance to deploying AI applications. And the number one reason is like they have to learn to trust you. They have to learn to trust your track record, and they have to learn that the AI is a better, more efficient vehicle for making decisions that impact their business than if they gave that to some consultants or internal staff to do. So those are the types of courses and content that I go around. And then I have I don't like really calling it a community, because it's more like a network. Is because a community kind of is kind of cheap. People can kind of come in and out of communities. I think a network is something where you are all learning from each other over an extended period of time, because AI is always changing and the job dynamics are changing. Getting a job 10 years ago is much different than getting a job today. The dynamics have completely shifted. I want everybody to kind of like learn from everyone else and share those experiences with everyone. That's why I kind of like more or less calling it a network. A community is just, I don't know, it's like communities are free to join. They're kind of cheap. You might learn something from it, but in a network where it's a little bit more curated, then I can make sure that everyone's learning something from someone.
And that's why, and we're speaking, by the way, just to fill in the audience, about remixinstitute.com. That's REMIX Institute, INSTITUTE.com. That is Douglas Pestana's courses archive, where you can learn, you can have introductions to AI. And I'm addressing this more specifically to the younger people in our audience who are looking for, let's say, more location independent career paths. That's a big point of emphasis for a lot of people in the, let's say, offshoring, internationalization industry, move to Latin America industry. You would call it that. Some people call it Plan B industry. So, because there are so many companies with that name, Plan B Paraguay, Plan B, there used to be a company called Plan B Panama that, my CEO, Vijay Varghese, used to work with even several years ago. So, I mean, it's pretty common that, a lot of our audience skews male, just like a lot of the coding skews male. But the fact that you mentioned that there's a lot of the courses that no coding is involved, can hopefully create a little more gender balance in the I'm being binary about the genders, but just a little more balance in terms of the audience and how it skews, and especially even on ages. There's a lot of people approaching midlife looking for new careers because they feel like the career they're in is either dead end, or they feel like it's about to be technologically disrupted.
Well,
I mean,
the other part of it is just what I try to do is, like, AI is going to help you increase your earning potential because it makes you more productive. You can learn more things. You can think. You just be able to provide solutions. At the end of the day, you become more valuable the more scarce you become. And the scarce people in industry, there's a lot of mediocres, a lot of people in business who are just there to collect a paycheck, and they don't get paid that much, right? So if you stand out by saying, I am going to add value to the business, and here's how I'm going to do it through AI, or I learn this is how AI can help businesses, then you could become more valuable to your business. I share insights about I've been working remote since 2021. I spent several years trying to find a remote job. Luckily, COVID kind of changed everything, and I don't think that will ever reverse. I think that COVID has kind of changed this whole go into the office, you become more productive. I don't think that's the case at all. If they're worried about people not working while they're not in the office, those same people are not working when they're in the office. They're pretending to work. They just do a better job at it. So we can do all this stuff remotely. We can get if you can figure out a way how to work remotely, you are very valuable to a company by applying AI or learning about AI, just learning new skills in general. Then what ends up happening is that you get a high income potential, and you get to work remotely. So you're no longer geographically constrained. So you can find somewhere, anywhere in the world. By the way, I wouldn't even restrict it to the US. It's the fact that we're having so many of these Plan B industries showing up in the past few years, that we're having these discussions, is really sad, because we all, I still, I'm still an American. I love my country, but I'm seeing it in decline after you travel internationally. Like, things are getting worse; they're not getting better. So it is good to have a plan B. It could be internationally, but if you have those three factors, you have a way to work remotely, you have a high income potential, and then you have a geography where you become geographically agnostic and work in a low cost of living area. Then you've positioned yourself in better than 99% of people. That's really what I'm trying to teach, is like, you don't become valuable just by learning what everybody else is learning. Programming is easy actually to learn, relatively speaking, but if it's so easy to learn, anybody can do it, and that's not what makes you valuable. What makes you valuable is scarcity. So these are the skills I try to teach in my courses that not everybody else is learning.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this too, because the company is Legalmente is was founded in San Antonio, Texas, and I was thinking about this too because San Antonio has sort of not gotten as much attention. It's been overlooked because the national media, for whatever reasons, many reasons, has been hyping Austin as the greatest city ever in Texas, and I know people went to school there. I know a lot of people who still live there, but I think San Antonio is kind of underrated, personally, if you're going to be in Texas anyway. I think it's got kind of a lot going for it, especially the proximity to the hill country and the Mexican border is going to become more important in the coming years, I feel. And there was a building. By the way, I wanted to mention to you about this whole return to trying to force people back in the office trend, because there was a tallest building in Fort Worth, Texas, which is now, if I'm not mistaken, the 10th largest city in the United States. It sold for like something like 120 million. Just I think it was recently as 2020, either right before or right in the midst of the pandemic. And at an auction, it sold for 12.3 million, which is 10 cents on the dollar of its previous values. We're talking about a 40-story office building in downtown Fort Worth, Burnett Plaza. And I'm just using that as an example of let's say that the destruction that this irreversible change that the pandemic ushered in towards remote work. It was already going that way, but it just simply accelerated everything in that direction. There's just no going back. The Burnett Plaza will still exist. The building will still be there. Don't get me wrong. It'll probably be converted into condos again for people who want to live in downtown Fort Worth if they can do that. I don't know how the floor layouts of a lot of these office buildings. It's a tough thing to do to convert them, especially the 1980s ones. We're not talking about these stately, brick towers from the 1920s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one example of what we're talking about here. There's suddenly we're in an era of disruption, and you're in the business of teaching people how to adapt. You're in the business if the big waves are coming in, like those giant waves that hit the shores of Portugal. I forget the name of that town, Nazare or something like that, on the Atlantic Ocean in Portugal. You're in the surfboards business. You're in the business of teaching people how to ride the big wave and not just get swamped.
That's right.
And knocked head over keister and head first into the bank. So, well, we've got about let's say 15 minutes left. If you want to go the full hour, we could even do 5 minutes of overdrive if you're open to that. But in terms of, when you were traveling, you mentioned the countries you visited earlier and some of the things you were seeing, and you had some interesting thoughts on Southeast Asia. And I think Southeast Asia has a lot of advantages from a retirement perspective. I think it has certain downsides if you're still working with people, obviously in North America or even in Europe, in those time zones, because of the time zone difference. But I did want to ask you, what did you see because this is a question I've been asking our guests. What have you seen in these countries that maybe is encouraging? We spent a lot of time talking with Venezuela Insider, as well as our guest Ernesto Contreras earlier about what Nayib Bukele is doing in El Salvador, and the amazing changes in terms of at least the security situation in the streets and for ordinary people there. Not that there still isn't a lot of poverty, that there is, but just the fact that he's been able to defeat the narco-terrorista gangs there and really show that a positive change is possible in Latin America. What, in your view, is the Latin American Renaissance? Do you have an opinion on that subject?
Yeah, no, I think I've seen more. I've seen more world leaders try to clear the way in Latin America. I've seen more world leaders in Latin America try to clear the way of welcoming sort of like just a new crop of industry, a new group of participants inside their national ecosystem, and I've seen that more. Like, I really don't know what Bukele's end goal is, and it looks like he's just making it safer for people to get rid of the image of El Salvador as one of the crime capitals of the world, and making it safer so that it's going to promote tourism, and then after the tourists come in, they start to see how amazing this place looks. He cleans up the act, and now it's like a great place to visit. Then they'll be like, I could see myself moving here. Geographical proximity to the U.S. is not too bad. Same time zones and that sort of thing. And hey, if I'm a remote worker, this could work out well. I don't need to be based in the U.S. I see that in Argentina with Milei, obviously trying to cleaning up everything there. It was my first time going to Argentina. I was in Buenos Aires, and it just seemed like it looked like there was my feeling was, I don't know, I don't have any data behind it, but it just seemed like there was much more international tourism coming in there. People trying to find out, like, what's going on here? Like, why is Argentina been put on a map? You know, why was Milei's election so disruptive? Like, he's basically, if he'd be able to turn that country out of decline and do a 180, then that's going to get people's attention. I think Bukele, same thing, like 180. I'm not too familiar with the geopolitics over in Thailand or Malaysia for that example. I do know that they have a little bit more of a leftist government in Thailand, but Thailand's usually been, historically, they've had a good diplomatic relationship with the U.S. So I think if anybody were looking to retire there, Thailand would it'd be an easy location for them. But I would say Argentina, out of all the countries I visited, was definitely one that was sort of making the push to get more international investment and more international interest. If you think about Argentina, how long it takes to travel there from the U.S. is actually quite a long flight, almost as long as if you were traveling to Asia. So if somebody's going to decide, should I retire or have part of my business, some of my operations near shore in Argentina, or should I have it in Asia, the distances are almost the same. There's not too much nonstop flights out of the U.S. going to Argentina. So I think they have to work on that. There's a few infrastructure problems, but out of all the countries I visited, I think Argentina is trying to show the world, like, hey, come and invest here. Elon Musk, when he was in, he posted something on X when I was out there, and it was a picture of him in Malay. So I'm sure there was some discussions about, like, how can you move some of Tesla's operations over here, whether it be technology development, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of software developers, a lot of software engineers near shore, good quality ones too in Argentina, that could potentially augment a U.S.'s workforce. And then, I mean, I'm not going to pretend or guess what I thought it was, but it's clearly Malay making gestures to the rest of the world that, with my changes, it's gonna be, Argentina will be a place to invest and a place to maybe move. And that's sort of what I was seeing. I think Thailand has just been Thailand. It's been Thailand for a while. A lot of retirees. Same thing with Costa Rica. So I think those places kind of stay the same. Yeah, and Panama. So it's going to be these newer destinations: El Salvador, Argentina.
And now that Colombia is getting safer, or is perceived to be getting safer, although
right,
still certain bad parts of town and certain maybe Colombianas to avoid. But I mean, it's definitely seems to be getting better in terms of, let's say, the Pablo Escobar stereotype is sort of being slowly receding in the collective rearview mirror, despite everything that the TV series Narcos did to sort of popularize it. But I mean, and this is the thing, because a lot of people are still operating on certain stereotypes. A lot of the boomers are still living in sort of the perpetual 80s and 90s. They get criticized for that. I think the Xers will probably get criticized by their kids for sort of living in perpetual 2000s. But I mean, it's interesting to me because I think what you're doing is so fascinating, because you're on the cusp of, not only because you've co-founded in Texas, and I just wanted to mention briefly this industry, but when I think about professions that are going to be impacted by what you're doing, and it's not just the paralegals, who look something up. It might be the landmen, because I was thinking about Argentina from the perspective of oil and gas. You're going to have a lot of Texas fracking guys go down there. If, from what I understand, if Malay is able to open up the Vaca del Muerte, which is a huge shale gas resource out there, in northwestern Argentina, is sort of the Badlands. When you get north of the Pampas and it gets even more dry, you move beyond the grasslands into sort of, I guess I forget what they call it in South America, the Chaco, I guess, is where it looks a lot like West Texas, basically. Yeah. It's pretty dry. It's sort of like high plains, semi-desert, semi-arid areas. And that's where the gas is concentrated. Obviously, Malay and Musk got together because Bolivia is like the Saudi Arabia of lithium, and that's a big component of the batteries. So maybe Tesla is thinking about moving a lot of their battery production down Argentina. It would make sense. You've got the Mercosur free trade agreement. So basically, you can get that Bolivian lithium into an Argentine battery plant, if not the actual Tesla factory, which may end up being, I don't know, in Mexico for all we know. I mean, a lot of the, let's say, automotive industry has already been outsourced to Mexico, and we could talk for hours, obviously, about all the different economic developments that are going on in Latin America and the very interesting phenomenon of the reshoring. Certainly, I've had that conversation with the attorney in Mexico City, who's looking for ways to profit from Chinese companies looking to get into the Mexican market, so they can sort of work their way around the extreme tariffs that have just been imposed on electric vehicles made in China, and so forth. So, I mean, a lot of things that are, let's say, somewhat counterintuitive, I think we're about to see. I think there's a lot of billionaires who are placing big bets on this Latin American Renaissance phenomenon. With all my respect to Bukele, I think he's done a phenomenal job, and he shows that leadership still matters, and one man still can make a big difference. But that being said, I do think that there's some sort of how shall I put this? Some billionaire hands moving the levers a little bit in a positive direction for a change, because we know a lot of billionaires have been very destructive, without naming names, in terms of their philanthropy. But I think that there's definitely some trends for the better, socially and demographically, because they recognize that what the United States has been able to do with the dollar and the dollar's world reserve currency position across Eurasia, it may not be able to do in the next, looking out 10, 15, 20 years from now. And redeveloping, repairing relations with our backyard, starting with Mexico, of course, with the whole, narco warfare that's going on there. That meanwhile, it's sort of like Dickens said, you have the best of times, you have the worst of times. It may not be quite the murder rate it was, at the height of the drug wars, but it's still pretty bad in certain areas. Well, in other areas, Mexico is booming. I mean, so it's sort of like, how do you convey that nuance to people? Because, we have Mexico as an offer on our site, and people will be like, oh, why did you put Mexico on there? It's not like Bukele. Well, yeah, you can't turn around a country of, nearly 150 million people. That's 1/3 the size of the continental United States, as opposed to a country that's the size of, Georgia, the state of Georgia, and it only has barely 7 million people. So it's a bit more of a challenge. So to turn around a larger company, and that country that includes Argentina. I mean, what Milei is doing, I think he's had a lot of successes. He's stacking up the short-term wins. Whether he can keep it going, shock therapy's obviously failed in the past in Argentina for a lot of reasons. So, that being an understatement, I mean, what happened in the early 2000s, Argentines know. So, I mean, it's interesting to see. We certainly at Exit Strategy want to help people find the optimal strategy for them. There is no one size fits all country. I mean, each country has successes. It has some drawbacks. There's a lot of people that love Paraguay and Uruguay, but they say it's kind of boring, they like the action, I guess, in Brazil, the more vibrant nightlife, let's say, of Buenos Aires. But I mean, it's each their own. I mean, so this is why we have these conversations. This is why we invited Doug on, because we wanted to get these new perspectives, and we wanted to talk to people that we know, 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, we had some conversations with some pretty cool entrepreneurs who've gone on to do some great things. So that's why we were happy to have you on the show. I was very pleased when you accepted my invitation. Let's say 7 minutes. Let's say we're kind of entering the lightning round here. What would you say, if you could encourage people to take a look, for example, the course, we didn't even talk about the cost of it. I mean, but what would you say is a good place if you were giving advice to a parent about, my child feels kind of overwhelmed about this whole AI thing, like, where would you tell them to start? If you had an 18-year-old who just graduated from high school and they're going to community college or they're going to university in the fall for liberal arts admission, what would you tell them to start if they don't want to be a programmer?
Yeah, I would start with just the main thing about AI is that you have to. It's still algorithmic. There's still a lot of math involved, but I don't necessarily think that you have to be mathematics PhD to thrive in it. If I were giving if I were giving advice to a kid who is about to go into college and which degree should I learn, they should probably take some online courses that they could do in just a few weeks. Mine just take like a few. I literally make my courses 20 to 30 minutes because I want to. I do it. I do something with my courses where I call it like they're Pareto optimized, meaning like if you took these course for 20 to 30 minutes, you're gonna know 80% of the information that you would know 20% of the information that you would need to have 80% of the impact, and then later on you'll learn the rest of that 80%. But to get started right away, here are the things that you need to know. And I think a lot of courses are not designed like that. They're designed to be drawn out because I guess in some students' mind, or like some people value like hours and like colleges, right? College shouldn't really take 4 years to complete it. You could have got that done much quicker. But
I look back at my high school and think I could have done graduate easily in 2 years.
Oh yeah, no, that's another thing. Like I don't
16
understand. Like
instead of 18.
yeah,
We
no,
waste 2 years of teenage life, at least, sometimes 3 or 4.
yeah, the fact
For the
that
smarter
people
kids.
we're entering the workforce at 22, that is way too late on average, right? Because it's 18 that they graduate from high school,
And it
3 to 4 years.
reduces fertility in
Right.
certain segments of the population. We have to say it. We just need
And
to say it.
and earning potential, like they don't mature financially until much later, when then you could have pushed that curve in much sooner. And it's just the education system is like 18 years of like, why is it 18 years? I literally took the same courses over and over in like elementary school, middle school. The English classes didn't change, but for some reason you were taking like English classes every year up until high school. It's like that's all unnecessary. And again, it's like maybe it talks about like the Teachers Guild a little bit. Somebody has their hand in designing those programs, and we're not part of those decisions. Therefore, you got to go through the system. So if back to the kid, like I would say, before you go and enter, don't take my advice about which degree to go into, or even make the decision to enroll until you maybe take some online classes first and see if that's right for you. And if it's not, then don't get a computer science degree, don't get a mathematics degree. If you like more of the strategy of it, maybe you want to get a business degree. But as you take a course, you could say like, this isn't for me. It doesn't. There's lots of free. My courses, I do have a lot of them on there for free. Legalmente is also, people can use it for free. Up to a certain amount, right? And then after that, if you want some of the more advanced courses, you pay for those, and it's still pretty cheap. I'm not trying to be a college here where I charge you tens of thousands of dollars for. And also Legalmente, we're also trying to reduce the cost of living. We're not trying to charge you like a lawyer. So we have free tiers, and we also have paid tiers. Get as much as you can from the free courses, and then if you find that you like the technical stuff, like the engineering, the solving, the software side of it, go to get a degree in mathematics or computer science, or some universities do offer degrees in artificial intelligence now. But if you don't like that side, you're like, I don't want to be programming, I want to be more, I still want to be involved in the AI side, then it'd be like getting a degree in business or economics, where you can still leverage AI and use it to solve business problems. You just don't need to be the guy that codes it. You could become a product manager, even, that you're managing teams of AI engineers to and just kind of giving them on a track of. But the problem is that these university professors don't even know all these jobs. You don't really find out all these jobs exist until you're out in the workforce.
Exactly. I mean, there's an internet meme that's been going around. You may have seen it on X, where it says you were born into a world that no longer exists, or you were educated for a world that no longer exists. And I think a lot of the financial pain that I know I've suffered in my life, but also just Americans have gone through, has been because we couldn't reorient in time. We couldn't adapt to the conditions that were imposed on us. We were in let's say, especially for us millennials, we were in kind of a sort of a stable, lower inflation. I wouldn't say low inflation. There's never been any low inflation in our lifetimes, but I mean, a lower inflation environment We came of age like in the 90s and early 2000s, a more, let's say, economically optimistic era, and then we're confronted with 2008 crash, COVID, economic shocks, so many things that have happened where the burden is all on you to shift and adapt to it. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular, any single person or political party or force. What I'm saying is that this question of how to educate yourself and how to maintain a continuing education in life is so critical right now, because there's so many dead end degree mills online too that maybe have not been successful for people, but yet people are still taking student loans to take those courses. So, I mean, this is why, get the best you can out of the free resources that are available. And if you can accelerate your child's education, do it. And I think I suspect for my Gen Z niece and nephews in particular, I'm a millennial, older millennial, but I don't even really like that label. I'm more of an ex-millennial. But the Gen Z that I see coming up, I think they are going to get married younger and have kids younger. I think they're going to rebel against, let's say, a lot of the just sort of endless postponement of their millennial older siblings or millennial uncles and aunts that they've seen, where they're not having kids at 30, 35, 40. They don't own a house at 40. All those certain, let's say, milestones that Gen X eventually hit, if not at an older age than their boomer parents, like, just have receded to the horizon for the millennials. And a lot of Gen Z, they want to rebel against that. They're like, no, I'm not going to college. I'm learning a trade, or I'm going to go work in the oil and gas field. I'm going to do it earlier. I'm going to learn from my older sibling or my uncle and aunt's mistakes, some of which they admit to them, say, hey, don't do it like I did. Just like we millennials, we didn't want to do it like our boomer parents did. Well, now the Gen Z doesn't want to do what we did. They don't want to repeat our mistakes or fall victim to the same forces we fell victim to. You see what I'm saying? So there's definitely a fourth turning generational dynamic that's going on. But it's more complex than that book, because the internet, and I think even the growing awareness of the outside world that the internet is creating among Americans, that, wow, some people in Mexico, they live better than I do. Like, that's a real mind, screw for a lot of people to deal with, or they never flipped on the telenovelas and saw that, a lot of those people were whiter than they were. So, I mean, that's the point I'm saying. Like, it's the greater awareness of the outside world is also changing the game for people, because they're saying, you know what, screw this. I don't have to pay, $7,000 for a couple of dental implants. I'll go to El Salvador, get it done for $1,500, and have another $1,500 to spend on going surfing for a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Yeah, the information is definitely being democratized and distributed better. I think that wasn't, even as a millennial growing up in the age of the internet, I still feel like the rate of how much information is being distributed now is still not as much as it was, it's more than it was when I first started. We had all that information. We actually had a lot of that information at our fingertips, even as early as 2010 with Google. But it was, I think you start to see what people are doing. You have like LinkedIn, you have X, and you start to see and you get connected with different people from around the world, and that opens up your eyes. I think the other thing that opens up your eyes even more is just like actually going to these international destinations and see for yourself. Like, do not restrict yourself to the U.S. and think that, and then you can watch something on TV, some news on TV, or even with something on social media, and then you think that you're educated internationally. You actually do have to go and travel there and then see, like, what are the differences. And just like if you were visiting domestically in the U.S., you go visit a couple of cities. I'm going to go visit New York City, see what that's like. I'm going to go visit Dallas, Texas, see what that's like. And if people are making decisions to move there domestically, they should do the same thing internationally and start to see. I mean, I'm not going to be like, I know that being able to travel internationally is an expense. I'll just say, like, that's something that I want. That's something that I had to make sure that I could build myself to be financially solid, so that I could do that. And it was to start to learn these new things. You have to be a truth seeker, and as earlier on, as early as 20. My first job, and I'm just going to share the story real quick. My first job was at a casino at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. I think they went bankrupt, so I don't know if they're there anymore. And I remember entering my first job, and I'm like, oh, these people are so smart. I'm glad I'm here. It's my dream job. After 3 months on the job, I'm like, this job sucks. I can't do this for the next 40 years of my life. I knew that just within 3 months of working that job, like something is wrong. All the stuff that they were telling you about, work to retire, to save enough to retire 65. And also they say save $1 million by the time you're 65. If you tried to save $1 million right now and you're 30, 20 or 25 years old, try to save 1 million. That 1 million is going to be worth less by the time you're 65. So 1 million is
you're not going to make it
anymore. You're not going to make it. So you do have to look outside.
By the time you're that age, $1 million is going to be like, enough to buy a compact car.
Exactly. So that's why you have to go and be like, where else? What are my other options for me? And you only do that through kind of traveling and meeting new people and networking with new people.
Yeah, I mean, the things that, like I said, I feel like, the world is spinning faster, but at the same time, I do feel more optimistic, especially since I've co-founded my own company, that, I'm on a certain path that is where I can find my niche in it, and I can help other people by helping other people find their solutions, their niche, and become, there's so much negativity in the alt media. There's so much doom and gloom about World War III and stuff like that. And we more than ever want to be voices for solutions for people. And that's why we co-founded, myself and Vijay Varghese, ExitStrategy.World. That's why the purpose of these webcasts is to talk as much as possible to entrepreneurs and to hear their optimistic perspectives and about how they're solving problems for people and thereby helping themselves and their families. So I want to thank you with that. I wanted to thank you for your time today, Douglas. We have reached about an hour and 7 minutes. So I think we can close the conversation for today. Thanks again for your time. It is June 11th, 2024, about 3:11 p.m. Central Time, and we are out. Thanks again, Doug, and look forward to speaking maybe with your partner, Jose, in a few months.
Thank you so much, and appreciate the mission of Exit Strategy World. Thank you so much for having me on today.
All right. Goodbye now.
Bye.